So in part 1 we covered off the SD image we need for FreePBX, creating our power over Ethernet cable for the injector, and now we're going to power on the 7940. There we go, keep finger on hash. We're looking for the reset lights to start. Here we go, we can let go. Reset key sequence detected. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, *0 hash. Config, no, we don't want to save it. So we're just doing a factory reset to get rid of all the configuration files that might be in the phone's memory. Okay, so what we're looking to do now is just to show you a bog standard boot up sequence. This may be different from yours because this has already been flashed with the SIP 8.12, the SIP firmware. So again, you might see something slightly different, but the options of the process we're going through will be the same. So it's going to try and it's going to get an IP address because it's going to get that from the network. It's going to try and request a configuration file, and it's not going to find it. So we're going to see some status messages, which is going to help us decide what information we need to do next. So again, phone and provisioned as expected. If we go into status and the status messages, these will change as more information comes through, but basically, we don't have a proxy backup set up, there's no valid line names available, and we do not have a trivial FTP server available. So the phone is going to try and connect to a TFTP server to pull down all the relevant configuration files, ring files, and firmware that it needs. So obviously we haven't got that at the moment, so what we need to do is set up a TFTP server on the Raspberry Pi. So we're going to do that and we'll be back. So let's just go into the Raspberry Pi. We'll SSH in. So I'll set up, I'll use PowerShell locally on the Windows 10 machine, and then we'll use PuTTY, because again you can SSH with either, but you might be familiar with different bits of software. So I'm going to go into the IP address, and I'm just going to set up a window to change the size of the font, make it a bit easier to see. So I should be able to just do this. Cool. So default login on the Raspberry Pi with FreePBX is root, for the login, and Raspberry. So that'll get us in. So on the first boot up, you want to do a Raspberry PBX upgrade. You probably would be better off to do an apt get update first, which would pull apt/get update. There we go. But yeah, I'm not going to run the full Raspberry PBX upgrade just yet. Just whilst it's doing that, just showing here, these are some of the files we're going to be copying over. But you'll need SIP default.configuration and the specific configuration file for your phone, which is just SIP followed by the MAC address followed by .cnf. The ring list and the firmware, we'll come on to that shortly. This firmware is already available if you're upgrading to SIP from Skinny, then you will need to have the latest firmware available. We'll come on to these later. These are the files that we're going to be needing. So we'll go back to the box, and what we need to do now is install a TFTP server. Now there is already a folder to be used at FreePBX, so it's expecting something set up, but at the box there is no server. So if we just connect, if we just CD into this folder, there is nothing in there, there's nothing running. So what we want to do is an apt get install TFTP DHPA, I think is what it's called. There we go, great. So I'll install the TFTP server. It will try to run it, and it will fail to start the service. But what we need to do is initially in etc default there will be a trivial FTP config file. So what we need to do is just amend, either create that SRV TFTP folder or amend it to another folder. But basically this is just going to be the directory that it's going to serve all the files from. So TFTP boot already exists, so Control X Y just to save that file. And what we then want to do is a let's see, init D, and we want to restart the service. So if we restart, why did that fail? Okay. Let's just reinstall it again. What are we doing? Did it miss something? Okay. Before I do anything else, let's just do a reboot. And we'll be back in a minute. This time what we'll do is we'll set up another PowerShell. Another PowerShell. We're going to just SSH in from here. But we'll keep these next to each other like so. Root at 192.168.1.25. It's not quite ready yet. Still booting up. There we go, we're back. So let's just see if it is running. So up arrow just to get the last status. Oh, it's now running. Great, okay. So the old turn it off, turn it on, fixed it. So this is now going to be serving files. So if we get back over to the phone and let's just see if it's found it already. If we go to status messages, unable to determine server. Of course we haven't set it up yet, have we? Cool. So all we need to do is unlock the configuration. Cisco cool. Go over to network configuration, and so again still no TFTP server number 7, 32, alternate FTP, change that to yes. We don't want to hit save yet because we haven't amended it. So TFTP server now has edit, so we can remove this and go 192 dot is either star or up there, 168.1.25. Accept that. Now we want to save, and it's configuring the IP again. I'm guessing it's going to try and look for some files. Oh, it's going to do a reboot. Excellent, cool, okay. So we know it's not going to work because there's nothing in the server, but what we're going to do is just, let's put that there. Oh, I missed the message. He was trying to do something. We'll have a look at the messages that we have. Requesting configuration, phone and provision. So, okay. So now we're going to get a status message. Here we go. So now we have different error messages. So it's 210 and 220. There's no SIP default and no SIP. So it knows obviously the MAC address of this. It's expecting the SIP MAC address. So the 12D file and the SIP default we need to add. So a couple of things we can do in parallel here. The line that we set up inside the SIP MAC configuration file needs to match what's in FreePBX. So it doesn't matter which order we do them, but we just need to make sure they're done. We'll leave this for the time being. We will head over to the local folder. So it's looking for the two files. Let's just send them over to the box. So SIP defaults conf to root at 192.168.1.25 TFTP boot. So it's going to send that to the TFTP boot server file. Raspberry is the password. and now we're just going to send over the configuration file for this particular phone, which is 12D138. Great. Cool. So these files are now on the phone. Sorry, they're on the server. So SIP default, it's the image of the firmware that you want to install. So there is already 3.8 to 12 on these phones. You may need to amend that to whichever version you're looking for. The phone label, which is going to be what appears top right in the phone, the proxy address, which is the FreePBX server, proxy port, standard, so we'll come on to this. 5060 is important. Out of the box, that's the standard default port. But keep an eye on that. 56, and again, this is just standard stuff. If you want to, you can change, this is the TFTP address that we're using. We've already put it in the phone though already, so we don't have to worry about this. But it can't hurt to have it there. Preferred codec. I've not really seen any major differences between most of the codecs, none or the G7. 11A LAW seems to be the one that most people have, and the rest you can probably get rid of. Most of these are not really needed, because all I'm using this for is internal for the house, so tweak it as appropriate. And that's it for the default configuration. That will be applied to all the 7940s on the network. And then for the specific phone, all we need here is the line name and the password that we're going to set up in FreePBX. It's just easier. I find it easy just to have everything as the extension number, because 2113 will then appear next to the line as opposed to whatever else you want. It's just easier. Oh, look at this, 2113. It's actually already, it's been looking, it's already pulled down the file, so it's obviously doing something. Whilst we've been cycling through, it's found the files and it's sent them to the phone. So I found we don't even save this version yet, but it knows this is going to be 2113. So if we go to status message, cool. So it's still not found sipdefault.com. So maybe next time it cycles through, it will find it, but it has found this phone and display name. I don't know what it's doing, but it's getting closer. Cool, that's pretty cool. So yeah, so anything in SIP default you can overwrite for each phone, which is cool, and you can tell it into it if you want to. So for now, we're going to set up an extension in FreePBX 2113, and then we'll be back. So let's just do this. We haven't logged in yet, have we? So 192.168.1.25. We're going to set this up. This is a vanilla install of FreePBX. Give it a username and password. I'm just using admin. Use admin again, and I will do Cisco at nextcave.com. I don't think these get generated, but that's fine. And then just hit setup system. So then we're done. We can log in, admin. Yeah, we're in UK, and then we're done. So what I want to do here, it's kind of set up the majority of things, but keep that screen in. Cool, let's see if we can do that. Right, so what we need to do now, go to extensions. We're going to set up a new legacy Chan SIP extension. We're going to give it a name, 2113. We're going to change the password as per the SIP Mac configuration file, 1234 ABC. I think it has to be less than 10 or 8 characters, but yeah. The only thing we need to change in here in the extension initially is NAT mode. Just change that to never, and then I'm going to go to the bottom and hit submit just off screen. I'm going to submit the changes. Oh, valid display name. Okay, cool. We'll just call that, yeah, makes sense, no body, which will appear when you call other people on the network. Okay, now we're going to submit the changes. It's not going to do anything until, just put this in display for a second, so we hit apply config, and then it's going to take a minute or two to reload. For some reason it's very slow, I don't know why. So then the phone, we've set up the configuration file on the phone. We have the extension set up in FreePBX, and once this config has taken place, I was just curious if the phone's going to actually automatically get assigned and if it's going to register, or if we need to do a reboot. I'm not sure. It seems to be cycling through all the time anyway, so we'll just look at the status messages and then we'll just reboot the phone, and it's not going to work, but that's fine. There's just one more thing to change. That is ridiculous. It should no way take this long. Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened there, but okay, so 2113 is set up. We don't need this anymore. We're just going to head straight back over to the phone. We'll do a reboot, which is *6 and the address, and you'll see the light go on at the bottom. There we go. That's good. Is it network button? Anyway, that button there. So the SIP defaults and the SIP MAC configuration files are now in the TFTP server. The phone is configured to connect to the TFTP server on the Raspberry Pi. So it should configure the phone, so we should see Nextcave appear. It should be 2113 appear here. It will try and install the firmware, but it's not there, so the files, I should copy those over next as well. But I just want to see if those two files are enough for the phone to register with FreePBX. Here we go, right. So 2113 is set up. We get a dial tone, can't do anything with it. We're not registered. So the little X there basically means that yes, it's getting a configuration file, but it's not talking to the server. So there's one thing we need to change, and it took me ages to realise this, because I'd completely missed it in everything else I was looking at. But I'll keep this here so we can see it when it instantly changes. In fact, no, sorry, it's not this. It's not this website that we need. We need to go back to our configuration files. And we will need to do a reboot. Not sure. We'll try this. So basically, you might need 5060 as the default port. For some of your phones that use this configuration file, but the 7940 it needs to use 5160, because that is the default port in FreePBX for the CHAN SIP legacy driver. But I'm just going to add this to SIP. So we're going to add this into here. So proxy 1 port 5160. Is that right? Proxy 1 underscore port 5160. Cool. So it's going to override what's in the SIP default configuration file. Save that. Yes. And I guess we need to reboot the phone because it's not going to get the new configuration file any other way. So let's just do this. 1, 2, 3. And the 2113 should now register with FreePBX. Give this a second. I'll just open up this. Nothing else has changed. And this is the bit here. This device uses Transip technology listening on port 5160. Therefore, for this phone, the proxy server is port 5160. Now, I don't know if technically that is actually correct, but the X will disappear now, just with that simple change. So we're now registered. Goodbye, little X. Yay. So I hope you found that useful. Please do like and subscribe and share this with anybody you think might find it useful. And really appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye.